Past and present GameStop employees, what are your best cringe stories? We had a woman come in with a $200 return that was like 9 months outside of the return policy. But she explained that her sister had asked her to come and return these things because her sister had gotten in a horrific car accident and lost both of her legs and had been unable to return the items within the return policy. So we decided to be nice and grant the return, even though it was so far out of the policy and most of the items had gone down in price considerably. The woman ended up buying several new games for her nephew, the legless sister's son, and several items for her own son with the money. A couple weeks later she comes back and wants to return the new games, even though they've been opened and played and are now also outside of the return policy. She said her sister was upset that she returned $200 plus worth of stuff and her son only got a couple games out of it. The customer likely left out that she had spent some of the money to buy games for her own child. We explained to the woman that it was outside of the policy and the new games had been opened and gotten a lot of views, but she threw it in our face that we had gone against the return policy last time. Duck us, right? So we were being cruel not to make another exception. The woman was being shitty with us, so we held firm. A line was forming at that point. Then the woman yells something like, "I can't believe you would be so cold-hearted. My sister lost her legs in an accident and you won't let us return these things that she bought only a couple weeks ago. My sister doesn't have her legs anymore. It's not her fault she couldn't return to the store in time." All of the customers look at me like I'm Satan. Some actually leave the store because they tell us they can't believe how callous we are being. We still didn't return the latest stuff. Lots of kids think GameStop is a hangout spot where I live, so they'll just loiter until it's time for them to leave. We attracted a lot of neckbeards too. When Skyrim was coming out, tons of kids were stoked for it, probably 10 to 15, and neckbeards would make it their mission to prove that they knew the entire history of Skyrim and that the kids weren't OG fans like them. A 20-year-old guy gets into an argument with a kid about how he didn't even begin to know about the game and he shouldn't buy it until he learned about all the lore. The kid just calmly says, "Dude, it's just a game, chill out." Never seen a grown man roll his eyes at a 12-year-old. Fortunately, it's been long enough since I quit that I've forgotten many horrible moments. For me, the first specifically cringe moment that comes to mind was when this guy in a full forest green sweatsuit came in. I asked if he needed help finding anything, and he said absolutely not. "I'm just here to see what the console peasants are playing these days." Okay, a simple no, wold, done just fine. I was an assistant manager at GameStop during last generation's console release, like at the heart of the Wii release. So as I'm working my shift, I constantly get people asking if we have Wii's and would have to either crush their dreams or make their day. Well, one day at least a week before Christmas, a mother came in asking if we had the Wii. I told her no, but did offer our phone number to give us a call anytime we are open to see if we have them in. She declines and exits the store. A few hours later, same lady comes in, but with her son this time, and says to him, "You see that man over there? He ruined your Christmas because he won't sell me a Wii. I ducking lost it." I told her to get out of my store and not blame her procrastination on me. I was trying so hard not to curse due to other customers in the store, but if I was able to go unfiltered I probably would have been fired. Edit, my grandma. Worked from 06 to 10. Microsoft had just put out Wi-Fi adapters for the XB360. Literally that day, magically, a guy turns up with 5 of them still in the boxes that he wants to sell to us. We refuse, citing the fact that they still are in the package. He walks outside the front door and rips one out of the package while we watch, then comes back inside to sell it to us. We still refuse. He took off and went to another store and managed to sell one to that store. Then came back to us with the other 4 and tried to pitch a fit that we wouldn't take them because the other store did. Yeah, we are using every rule we can not to take in clearly stolen merchandise. There are 2 others that really stand out in my head. One was around Christmas time. Woman comes in with 3 kids, all about 11 to 13ish boys. They're initially just here for one game and a pre-order. While they're at the counter with me, the boys basically start tag teaming, one up with mom, the other 2 chatting in back. All three wore her down until she left with a brand new Xbox 360 and 4 games for it. And 2 extra controllers. Finally, we had a dysfunctional family of our older teenage boy, 16, 18-ish, who had a girlfriend, a younger boy, 8, 10-ish, and the mom. Older kid stole his little brother's games, came in, and traded them in to get whatever new hotness was out. About a week or 2 later, mom brings both boys in, with the girlfriend tagging along for girlfriend reasons, and tries to buy back all the games that the elder son sold. Not just the game, but like the specific cartridge or disc. She spent probably an hour trying to get this to work and pleading with us to figure it out, to give it back to her. We could only do that with a police report until she basically rebought the games. Meanwhile, the older boy she dragged along stood in the corner with his GF and spent the entire time trying to round third base. Very slow Saturday night. Only had one client at that point. We were not near any major city, so it was calm more often than not. That client wanted to buy some expansion for The Sims on PS3. We didn't have any of those, and to this day I don't know if the physical copies even exist. Well, after telling him we didn't have it in stock, he talked about what he did in the game. As I can't be rude, I politely listened for the first 5 to 10 minutes. Problem is, guy started getting really into it. You'd think the guy would go on with his life after 15 minutes. Oh no, not him. He went on for a whole 4 hours, explaining to me in excruciating details how his house looked, how he killed his multiple families, incest stories, torturing babies, you name it. I had very few clients within that 4 hours to relieve me from this guy, and this was undoubtedly the longest 8H shift I've ever done. He went to his house only because I was vacuuming the shop and we were preparing to close. I've had a very passionate hatred for The Sims ever since. About 7 years ago, when the new Wii remotes were still fairly new, someone called asking about them. They had a really thick accent and were difficult to understand. I had to ask them to repeat everything several times to finally understand their questions. That got a little more specific. Yes, we have the new Wii remotes in stock. Yes, they are the Wii remote pluses. Yes, we have them in several colors. Yes, they are the ones with the rumble feature. I'm sorry, sir, I didn't catch that. Can you repeat your question? I must have asked him 5 times to repeat his last question, because I just could not understand what he was saying. I could catch bits and pieces and slowly was able to understand him better each time until finally I successfully heard, "It doesn't vibrate anymore," after I put it up my rectum. Do you ever stick the remotes up your rectum to enjoy the vibrations? He was definitely trolling me, or at a minimum was trying to get me all flustered for his own enjoyment. I just pretended like I still couldn't understand what he was saying, and had him repeat himself about 10 more times, before listing off their price and all the different colors we had, and eventually hanging up on him, when he kept asking if I like to stick Wii remotes up my butt. Seasonal GS worker. Guy walks in, looks around, asks where the PS4 Pros are. I tell him that we don't have any more. Guy casually takes out a huge wad of bills, just starts to mess around with it while talking to me. Guy, you don't have any in the bag. Me, nope. I notice that most of the bills are $1s and $5s. But we are getting more tomorrow and we can pre-order them now for you. Do you want one? Guy just looks at me for 30 seconds, then turns around and leaves. Store manager and employee for nearly 10 years. I took a transfer to a store in a lower income area to be a store manager in training. First day, a school day, mind you. These 2 kids about 7 and 9 come in and start playing on the demo units and looking around. My boss comes in and he steps in something on the way to the back room to put his stuff away. Turns out the younger one cheated on the floor, then apparently wiped his butt like a dog on the carpet. That was my cue, and I told him I'm going to lunch now, and wondered what the hell I just accepted to transfer into. As I'm coming back from lunch, I see the kids being rather forcefully kicked out of the store. Turns out they went home, cleaned up the little boy, came back, and he proceeded to piss all over the PS3 demo unit. I have a lot of other memories, but that was by far the grossest. During my employment with GameStop, I had a regular who would come in literally every day. After a couple months of working, I noticed he was coming in twice or 3 times a day. I talked to my co-workers about it, and apparently he would come in, ask if I was there, and then leave if I wasn't. I would often run into him at restaurants, the grocery store, the mall, the park, pretty much anywhere. It was a town of 30k people, so I thought whatever, I guess it's a small enough town for that to happen. Well, one morning when I was receiving shipment, he comes in and we're chatting. He mentioned something about how he memorized my license plate, so he could tell when I was working, so he didn't have to bother my co-workers. I joked about how that must be how we keep running into each other, and he admitted he would look around town for my car when I wasn't working. He asked me out a few times, and I turned him down every time, straight up telling him I wasn't interested. After that he cancelled all of his pre-orders through me. It counted against me, and I got written up on multiple occasions for not meeting my goals because of this, and would always give me awful surveys. It was pretty upsetting, so I started leaving my car at home, so my numbers wouldn't suffer. But then he started showing up at my house, and just hung out in the lot across the street. Sometimes he would apologize for making me look bad at work, then would offer to take me out to make up for it. I'd tell him no, and he'd get mad again. After a couple months of using Uber and hiding in my house, I ended up moving, transferring stores and changing my plates in case he was ever in town. Edit. A lot of people mentioned getting a restraining order. In my previous experiences, I was told that I couldn't get one unless I was physically assaulted or had proof that someone was threatening me, neither of which he did. I made a complaint to my supervisor, but was told we couldn't outright ban him from the store, so I would have to deal with it or busy myself in the back room if there was another employee there. TDL, our customer memorized my license plate so he could find me around town. Asked me out, I said no, and he started showing up at my house. I had to move. For a while at my local GameStop, the head manager was this pretty girl. She was constantly being hit on by most of the male customers despite the fact she was married at the time. My favorite moment was this guy was hitting on the head manager, while again I assume his young son was looking at Xbox 360 games. She shot him down, and he turns to his son and says, "Hurry up and pick. Your mom's waiting in the car." Apostrophe. Not an employee, but one time went in and there a kid was trying to persuade his mom to buy him Saints Row 3. The employee was being grilled by the mom asking all these questions, and the employee was trying to explain to her why it wasn't an appropriate game for her kid, but was clearly uncomfortable explaining why. There was only one employee, and I was impatient to get out with my purchase, so I told her why exactly it was not an appropriate game for her kid. "You can beat people to death with a 3-foot-long purple dildo in that game." She immediately turned on her kid for telling her that it was way less violent and graphic than GTA, and dragged her kid out of the store. Me and the employee had a good laugh. I had two neckbeards get into a slap fight over PS2 vs GamerCube. They got winded quickly, and I could not declare a winner. I had another where a customer was playing Street Fighter 2 on the 360 demo unit. One of my employees was a professional fighting game player, and was ranked very highly at that time. He asks if he can join, but jokingly asked this kid to take it easy. He looks my guy up and down, and in the nerdiest voice possible snorts, and says request denied. So my buddy lets this kid whoop his ass in the first round, and says, "Man, you're pretty good," and was going to let it go at that, but the kid tells him that he sucks at fighting games. My employee decides to unleash hell on him, and demolishes the kid, who told us he was going to tell on us to the manager, who was I. Had a dude that looked mid-20s question my sexuality over not selling him Madden early. He happened to be there when a shipment came in with the A-tape and do not open until .. all over it, and he had enough brain cells to rub together to guess what it was, but not to understand why I couldn't sell to him early. I worked at a GameStop about 12 years ago. In front of my store was a bus stop that had stops to questionable locales that always brought in a strange crowd. I have two very fond memories of working there. The first is a story of a generally normal looking lady. Everything seemed fine as I greeted her and asked if she needed any help. The typical "I'm just browsing," as she proceeded to check out games on the wall. 5 menus go by. I'm browsing things on my phone. I look up to see the woman pulling pieces of fried chicken from her purse, eating them as she browsed. That's when I noticed the Golden Corral, an American buffet, paper cup in hand. I can only assume that she went over to the corral across the street and stole a boatload of chicken using her pews as a container. There was no plastic bag in her purse as far as I could see, just chicken on purse action. She was using the same hand to grab games and eat chicken, a trail of grease and breading laid in her path. The second story is of a gentleman who tried to trade in his GameCube, but forgot to take his crack rocks out of the disc tray. I quickly closed the lid and handed it back to him, saying I couldn't accept his trade. Of course he was furious, demanding why. After telling him to open the lid, he got a huge grimace on his face, gave me a high five, and said good looking out brother, before leaving my store. Note, sorry for any mistakes. At work on my phone typing this up. Edit, tried fixing up some spelling and grammatical errors.